Here we are in 1880, then quick look at the standings as we come into the communist era. And our player 1 here, Train Mad Tony, with the Baocheng and the Ningxi Railway, 1032, way off the pace in last place. Our second player here is Balanced Bernie with the Hukun Railway and the newly opened Jinglan Railway, is in third place with 1523. Our third player here, Cautious Charlie, with the Orange Jingha Railway and the Binshu Railway just opened, with 1796. That's first place. Payout Pamela with the very strong Xichang Railway, looking very good, still with 3 trains on it which aren't rusting. The others everyone else has lost trains with the force coming out, but she hasn't. And this just opened, this Chungkung Railway, second place with 1634. And Reckless Rachel, our fifth player here. We talked a while back about when she purchased this Baocheng Railway share, how that might have been a mistake. It probably was, because she didn't earn enough income. I looked at buying the Xicheng instead, and she ended up buying 2 Xicheng, but if she'd had them earlier, then she'd have had enough cash probably to capitalise a second company and still be somewhere in the running, but as it is, has kind of dropped off the pace with 1374, fourth place. So quite a wide spread now from 1032 to 1796, but really these 3 players in the middle here, second, third and fourth players, 1634, 1796, 1523, all still feel like contenders. Our first and fifth players beginning to feel a bit like also rans. Everyone though now has difficult decisions to make about how to use all the capital sitting on their companies, and how to time train purchases. So these 3 companies down here have been forced to buy 4 trains. We're now going to get a period where we're running through all of the companies. The privates are no longer operating, and the foreign investors are no longer operating. We're going to be running through all the currently active companies, giving them operating rounds, and there's going to be some difficult decisions across the board about whether to buy a 4, whether to hold on for a 4+4, whether to buy 2 4s. So this Jinghu Railway, for example, has got no trains on it, so he's going to have to buy a 4, but I'm going to have to look carefully at their cash to see if they buy a 4 and then maybe hold on for a 4+4, or do they buy 2 4s and try and get some income coming in from that. Does the 4+4 do them any good? And yeah, there will be similar decisions across the board from all the other companies. So that's where I'm at, and it's a very probably quite a vibrant part of the game here, where these decisions, especially for the 3 contender kind of players, are probably quite make or break. So the Jinghu Railway here has just bought the first 4+4 train. That does a couple of things. Firstly, it moves us into phase C, and that means that B work permits, like this one and this one and this one, no longer allow you to lay track, and it also means that brown upgrade tiles are available. So the Jinghu didn't have a train to run with, and so lost a lot of income, and that's set Reckless Rachel back even more, but has picked up 4x4, so now at least has a decent train set of trains again. Those 2 trains should allow them to make reasonable money. And we are on to the Ningxi Railway, but like I say, the brown upgrade tiles and the B permits running out are the important factor there. Well, the era of the 4+4 trains didn't last very long. In fact, it didn't last long enough for any of them to even get to make a run. They all got bought, starting here with the Jinghu JHU, and then moving on. Other companies bought a 4+4. The Ningxi bought one. The Jinglan is really screwed because the phase change to phase C, and only having a phase B permit didn't allow him to hook up this track that he needed to get out into open ground, and some aggressive tokening means that the HKR can't build the track for him either. And that wasn't deliberate, by the way. It's just that there's been a spate of fairly aggressive tokening with all these new companies starting up, and so the JLR is trapped in Beijing with a one-station run, which is all very unfortunate, but quite amusing. So the JLR railway is in real trouble, no ability to build its network, and the HKR can't get there without trying to find a way. It's now tokened into this corner, and it's got to try and find a way to get up and be building in this area. It just can't get there. It's a bit of a disaster, that. What to do? Anyway, the JLR didn't buy a 4+4, but the BZU did, and the Chenkung CKR did, and then the Kinshen needed a train and bought a 4+4, and that meant that we got round to the Baocheng and they bought the 6 train, which rusted the 3s. Now they had to pay a price. They had to withhold a payout in order to have enough money for that big fat permanent 6. The 6 is the first of the permanent trains, but it was worth it because it rusted the 3s, and the runaway Xicheng had 2 3s that it was getting a lot of its income from, and so the Xicheng has now been kind of quite aggressively tokened out of a lot of the routes it was running, and also is down to a 3+3 train. So it's whopping great big 43 a turn income. We'll see what that is going to drop to now. And the other thing is, it's got 500 cash on it, which is plenty, but it needs 600 for a 6 train, so it's probably going to have to withhold a payout. I mean, no doubt it can reach more than 100 with a 3+3 train, but it is going to have to withhold some cash. Yeah, that's where we're at. So the Baocheng has just run for 33 a share, pretty reasonably, and that was without the 6 train. That was just the 3+3, and the 4 ran it at 33 per share, and that is probably going to be pretty decent money, to be honest. The other thing the 6 train does is move us out of the communist era, so share prices will start to move again. And there is normal share trading, which means you can sell shares in companies that you are a director of. So we're coming towards the late game now, I think. The 6 trains are out. The end of the game happens when the second of the 8 trains is sold. You get 3 operating rounds for every company after the 8s go, and there are only 2 8s. Yeah, we're kind of approaching we're in the latter stages of the mid-game, approaching the sort of late game period, which feels good. Feels good to have got this far. And I'm going to probably do a run through, assuming there aren't, well, even if there are share rounds, I'll probably do a run through of all the current companies on the board, and just come back to the earnings per share and see what the earnings are looking like now that the train and tokening has station building has got much more aggressive, especially around Beijing, but also on some key blocking points down here and Shanghai. So yeah, let's I'll run through the companies and see what the earnings per share are looking like. Just a quick look at the sort of spread of earnings per share that our companies are making here. Top of the tree is the Baocheng, although it's got one of the few companies still with 3 trains on it, but up to 57 per share. The previously struggling JHU with a 4 and a 4+4 down on 47. You can see what was the previous dominant company, the Xichang. It's only got a 3+3 train on it at the moment, and it's down at 20 per share. The JLR, which was blocked out of building out of Beijing, back on 15. And then a whole slew of companies in the sort of 20 to 35 range. You've got the more newly formed QSR there, the Qingshen on 23, the Ningxi chugging along at 25, this green Hekun Railway, which was just running a 6, made 29 per share and has just managed to afford a second 6 train. Some of the other companies were hoping that no one bought another 6 and were then saving their cash for the next, which is a 6 electric for 700. And the Hekun was able to just scrape enough money for another 6 and have another round of the 6 trains running, and thought that would be a fabulous plan, given that a lot of its main rivals are just sitting on one sort of 3+3 or something, waiting for the better train. So decided that it was time to step in and make them pay for that decision. And that will probably somewhat make up for the fact that the Jinglan got off to such a horrible start after it got blocked out of its build here. That build actually got put in by someone else because it made sense for them, who were trying to run multiple routes and loops out around here. So it made sense for someone else with a 4x4, and they eventually filled that track in, thinking that the JLR was probably sufficiently screwed after a couple of runs of going nowhere. What else have we got? This Chenkung, this red rail, red token right in the middle there, running a very respectable 35, and the BZU up there in the north also running very well at 36. So yeah, you can never find a snapshot where it's entirely even, because some companies have always either been stuffed with having to purchase new trains, and so not getting a great run and drop down to 0 or very low, and others are in different different parts of the sort of cycle in terms of purchasing and losing trains. But that's the sort of snapshot that we've got at the moment. I've just, as I say, done the HKR, but they were the last one to purchase a train. We got through all the companies with no train purchases. It came back round to the HKR and they bought another one. So we've got to go through again. Whether that changes anyone else's decisions, I don't think it will, because they know the HKR hasn't got the funds for another 6 train. And it didn't look like anyone else wanted one, so they'll probably sit tight and still wait for the 6E that's coming up. That 6E though will rust the 3+3s, and there are a lot of people sitting on those. Actually, there aren't that many. The people that want to buy the 6Es actually have the 3+3s and will end up rusting their own trains. But that's just the way of it. So yeah, it gets quite difficult to make decisions in this game. Suddenly the track is that complex, the tokening is that complex, the options in terms of your sort of where you could upgrade and what routes you could open up, what's tokened, what isn't, what's going to be of value, all those equations and problems become that much more tangled and complex as the game reaches this stage, and I am finding it quite challenging to come and look at an individual company or player situation and make sort of reasoned decisions rather than just instinctive ones, but actually stop and take the time to look at everything that they've got to think about. What are they planning in terms of their next train, and how is that going to make enough income for them to either get a second train, or is it going to bring in enough income on its own for them to charge for the finish line? How do they envisage being first past the line, or first across the line, basically? And that's really but quite tough at this stage with the game reaching quite a complex state. But it is super enjoyable. Still really liking this 18xx because partly because there's enough of it that in a 5-player game I feel like there are always challenging and interesting decisions for all the players. The way the phases work, the fact you go into that sort of communist takeover and things change, you come out of it and things have changed again, the fact that you've got the phases of construction that you've got to think about, the fact that there are enough corporations and as well as the foreign investors and the private companies, but the 14 corporations mean that everyone's always got an interesting idea as to what they could try and capitalise, what they could try and open, what might work, what might synergise with what they've got. And I've not felt at any point in 2 playthroughs of this game that a player has nothing interesting to do, even when they're clearly behind, like this player one was with the Baocheng and Ningxi. I've still never felt like that player has nothing interesting to think about or to grapple with, or ways of trying to improve their position relative to the other players. And I really like that about this game. Playing it solo. I think I'd find it a lot more simple playing it competitively, where I'm just trying to focus on, very much on what I'm doing and what I can do relative to the other players. But multi-handed solo, it keeps my interest because all the decisions of all the players stay challenging the whole way through the game. So here we are. Like I say, I think there's 1 6 train left, but I might be wrong. There might be 2. No, there's 1 6 train left, but no one's going to buy it. No one's going to buy it, I don't think, and force a stock round. So I think we're going to get all the companies operating again, then a stock round, and then we're going to be into the 6Es and arresting the 3s. I think the 6Es. No, they don't start the grey tiles. It's the 8s that start the grey tiles. So, but the 6Es do cut our train numbers to 2. So, okay, onward. So the downside of the Hukun Railway, buying this 6 train last go around and extending the operating rounds for another go round the all the companies, is that he's given the Baocheng another monster run with his 3 trains, because the 6E hasn't come out and rusted the 3+3, and so the Baocheng has just run for 59 a share, which is way ahead of anything else, as you can see. And the next highest is the Black Jinghu Railway here, running at just over 51 per share. So you might think, well, with everything else sort of down here, this red CKR at 40, we've got a 38 there for the BZU, and a 35 for the JHA. And you might think, well, that's not very good, swings and roundabouts. But actually what it did was it let the 2 players who were 4th and 5th, you remember this player with the Baocheng train mad Tony was miles behind. So giving him runs at 60 a share, and player 5, who was also lagging way behind, giving them good runs in return for pulling back some of the colossal money being made, especially by the Xichang. But the Jingha has made consistently good payouts as well. So reining them in a bit wasn't a bad thing, and allowing players 4 and 5 some profit probably hasn't been a bad move on the part of the HKR. If you look at the payouts, and everyone's got 2 companies, if you add out the payouts from the 2 companies, the payout per share, the Baocheng and the Ningxi here come out top. They've got 59 and 27, so that's 86. this player who bought the other 6 train hasn't got to run it yet, and therefore their earnings per share is looking. Why have I got? Oh god, there's another. I accidentally put an extra 6 train on there. Good job that didn't make any difference. No one bought one, and I ended the share round because they'd have actually been 2. So that would have been a bit of a calamity actually. Oh. But disaster averted. So this guy who only had 1/6, and then this Jingland that got screwed out of any track because of its lack of permit, their total for the 2 railways is what, 29 and 15, 44, compared to, what did I say, 86 over here for the combined earnings per share. The Jingha is running at 35 and the BZU at a very healthy 38, so that's 73. That's very good, and Cautious Charlie has remained very strong and has got over £1,000 in cash here, and is doing very well by the looks of things, and got 13 certificates as well out of the 14 limit. Pay Up Pamela has got 14 shares and nearly 1,000 in cash here, 875, so loads of cash. The Xing Chang and Cheng Kung have run at, well, the Xing Chang is down from the high 40s where it was down to 24, but this Red Cheng Kung has picked it up and is earning 40, so 64 in total earnings per share for those 2 companies. And down here, the Jinghu and Qinshen have done very well. The JHU is on 51 and the Qinshen on 25, I think, 25, yeah, so 76. So the earnings per the total earnings per share across the 2 companies also very, very strong for Player 5, who was doing very poorly earlier in the game. Whether that's enough to have made any difference to the sort of positions, I don't know. I think Cautious Charlie, I'm not going to add up again, I don't think, but I think Cautious Charlie, this Jingha has run consistently strongly, and the Binju is now also running consistently strongly, and the guy's got the most cash and 13 certificates, and this Jingha is by far the strongest performer. He's got 60% of it, and that's up at 180 per share, and that's miles ahead of the nearest competitors, which are 130, 135. So this Cautious Charlie will currently be strong favourite, but there's a ways to go yet, and other people could theoretically catch up. So yeah, that's the position we're in, and what's about to happen now is that the Hukun has got a run to make with its 2 6s, and there's questions as to exactly how it monetizes those 2 trains, because it's not really got the routes to run them on, and it's kind of tokened out of getting anywhere. So yeah, it needs to find some track lays that actually break it out into open terrain, really, in order to make use of these 2 6 trains. And then what we're going to do is run out of 6 trains, because we're not going to buy another one, and we're going to move on to the 6Es. That's going to move us into, what that's going to do is rust the 3+3s and drop us to a 2 train limit for each company, which is only going to really affect the Baocheng in terms of train limit, but it's going to rust the trains on the Jingha and Xichang. However, they both have cash in reserve to buy the next train that they're aiming for, so they're not worried about that in the slightest. So we're moving on. So after the Hukun Railway here didn't buy another train, we went into a stock round. The remainder of the 6s were scrapped. We came into a stock round, and lots of people had loads of cash to spend. I mean, there was lots of money sloshing around. But you know, Cautious Charlie here with 13 certificates, that could only buy 1, and so still has even though he's changed his portfolio a little bit, still has 900 and more odd in cash there. And similarly, Payout Pamela here was full in terms of their portfolio and could buy and had to sell to buy and had to try and decide what to get rid of and what to invest in, and still has 900 and something cash. And you may, part of me is thinking, well, why are they not opening up a third railroad? We've still got the Longhai and the Nanjiang and the Jingguan and the Wunan Railway, the white, the yellow, this tan colour and this pinky purple colour railroads, which could potentially be floated and opening up and starting operating. And the reason that I'm not doing that or that doesn't look attractive for anyone is because, firstly, you can just about capitalise a company at 80, which would put 800 in its coffers, but 800 just about gets you a train like a 6E, assuming you get on the 6Es before they all sell out, or the 8s. Otherwise you're looking at a if something goes wrong there, you're looking at a missing out on a train and having to put more money in just to get a train out of your own coffers. And then what are you doing with that 80? If you look at the locations of these, they're looking like they're a token nightmare. So you start the Nanjiang Railway here. Where's it going to go? This is fully tokened, this is fully tokened, this is fully tokened. What's it going to do with an 8E? How is it going to get track that breaks out? Similarly, if you look at this LHR Longhai Railway, again, this is fully tokened, this is fully tokened. It might break out down here, but there's plenty of people with tokens around that could slap that in and cut it off. Similarly, this Wunan Railway in here has got token cities all around it. And the last one is this JGG in Beijing, and that's just running straight out into tokens and more tokens. So none of those look like attractive propositions to go, pouring 800 cash into in order to get companies that can barely run and might not afford a train. So I don't think those 4 companies are going to open, simply because because of that combination. The train price is getting so high that it looks too risky, and the fact that they're going to have to buy an enormous train which isn't going to be able to go anywhere. So this looks like it in terms of the company set up in this game. It's too congested and constricted now to let more companies on the board, and we're back to running the Jingha, and it is actually going to get a run with that 3+3 and then buy a 6E and rust the 3+3s, which is going to mean that the SCR doesn't get a run. And it's little things like that. It's things like that, that kind of timing working in your favour throughout the game, that is really important. So in this game, timing is everything, I think, because your initial company, the first company you gets so much capital, and then has the potential for so much capital coming into it from its foreign investor. And if you pick that right and hook up with it at a good time, you can get so much money into the company that really it's not about racing to get a permanent train. I don't think companies are struggling for permanent trains. Maybe the Jinghu, who's had some trouble, that might, of the initial companies that set up, that with its 4 and its 4+4, might have to withhold payout once, because it's running at 51, so it could withhold once and pull in 500, and that will give it enough capital to afford most of a permanent train when those finally rust. But everyone else hasn't struggled for the capital for permanent trains. and you know, these secondary companies, you've got a 4+4 there, a 4 and a 4+4, a 4 and a 4+4, a 4 and a 4 and a 4+4. These are in more danger. Although the Jinglan here has got an absolute shit ton of cash on it. Look, 700 and something. Oh, and then Ingxi's got 500 and something on it. These ones with the 4 and the 4+4 have got less, and this has got 300 and something on it. So capital for trains and the train rush doesn't seem to be, or hasn't in this game been, a desperate threat. You're not trying to dump companies off on people. You're trying to time things so that you get the right train with the right track layout and the right tokens at the moment when you can exploit all of those to make a big run, and get some nice big payouts. And then as those payouts go up, hopefully you only have to withhold one, say, to finance a bigger train purchase. And the reason you want to do that is because of these bonus sections on the share chart. So you can see on the share chart these +5s and then +10s and then +15s and +20s and this +40 in the corner, and that's a payout per share. So the JHA is getting +20 per share or +200 on its run just for being up there. And that's, you know, its runs are 35 per share or 350. So more than half of its earnings are coming from being high up on the stock market. And what that means is that you just want to be paying out. You know, whatever it is, you want to be paying out to move up because it finances itself. And then suddenly you do a big run and keep the cash and stay up in this +10, 15 or +20 zone, and that buys your train. What you don't want to be doing is having to withhold payouts lots of times on small payouts and moving back and back and back. That's terrible business in this game. But lots of small payouts just to keep moving forward, and then withholding a big payout to pay for a train is the way to go. And that is partly because this is not one of those games where, you know, your earnings per share have to be higher than your current share price or any of that funky malarkey, which I do like. I like that mechanic, you know, that inability just to pay out 1 per share and still boost your share price when it's currently at 230 always seems a bit absurd. But anyway, yeah, here being able to pay out consistently and just withhold on a big payout to if you need to finance a train is definitely the way forward. And this isn't really a game of dumping off companies. They're too robust. They're too easy to capitalise. They're just a bit too secure, really, and too valuable. You know, once you've got the track set up, it's too. You know, there's no winning from dumping off companies on other people to make them crash and burn, because you're just essentially saying you're going to finish 4th and someone else is going to finish 5th, but it doesn't seem like a winning strategy. This is a good companies and timing things well game. Now, a lot of people like the share dumping, aggressive knife fight kind of stuff, and I do too. But again, it's not a game that really suits to multi-handed solo, because what you end up doing is defaulting to everyone only ever risking holding 10% of a company, and that brings problems of its own usually in those types of games. So yeah, enough waffle. Let's crack on with a run for the Jingha and see where it gets to. So we've just finished another set of operating rounds for our companies, and you can see the Jinglan in here bought a train. That was a 6E, but he's not got to run yet, but decided he had the capital to get a permanent train, and he was sitting on just a 4 train and not making very much money, so the 6E made sense, even though he's a bit screwed in terms of track, but you know, these things happen. So is his other railroad that had come. That's just been the story of his later game. So you can see the earnings per share here ranging from the Baocheng at 59 and the Jinghu down at 53. But then some of these new startups, the Binzhu Railway and the Chenkung, which were both started later, now making 44 per share. And the SCR didn't make anything. The Xichang didn't make anything because its train rusted this turn and it had to buy a 6E. Yeah, you can see the share price chart as well here with the runaway Jingha right up at 180 and close behind it actually the Jinghu here at 150, and then these three clustered together at the top of the chart, and our newer startups down here in the sort of 100 to 90 to 105 range down there. So I've done a quick count up of the current scores for our 5 players from left to right, and if we come down here, Trainmad Tony, our first player, has got 1850 in shares, 778 in cash, a total of 2628. That actually puts him in 4th place. So I think he was a distant last at one point in the game. So he's actually done all right because he's now 4th. Balanced Bernie, who was one of the contenders, 2030 in shares but only 468 in cash, 2498. Now trailing by about 130 in 4th place. Our leader still is Cautious Charlie, our 3rd player, who's had this consistently performing Jingha, and now the Binzhu I just showed you turning out 44 per share, and he's got good sort of 60 and 70% stakes in those 2 companies. So he's got 2,380 in shares, but a massive 1,554 in cash that he's sitting on from all those payouts. A total of 3,934 comfortably in the lead. Then Payout Pamela, who was threatening with the with this green Xichang railway to run away with it earlier in the game, making double what all the other railroads were making and just raking in cash. The Chenkun has also been quite successful, but I don't think her... No, things just haven't quite, not getting payouts, trains rusting, people tokening her best runs out has all cost her, and she's got 1965 in shares, so not totally off the pace, 1371 in cash, 3336, so 600 behind now, and actually in 3rd place because Reckless Rachel, who was having a terrible time of it and had dropped right off the pace, is actually performing very well with the strongest of the share portfolios. She bought up her own companies when they were very low priced, and has got sort of 90% stake in one company, and she's just been turning out money with it by pumping its share price up. So she's now up to 2,470 in shares, which is the highest of any of the share portfolios, and only 1,050 in cash, but that does put her on 3,520, which is just ahead in 2nd place, and but still sort of 400 off the pace in terms of 1st place. Still, it's exciting to see that there is movement in terms of the ordering of the players. That players who have been in last place and really falling away have managed to pick back up again, and players who look like they were dead certs to run away with it have been clawed back. So that's all excellent to see from a sort of a solitaire play perspective. And what's happening in the game then? What's happening in the game is that none of the companies have got enough capital to buy any more trains, and so that means that we're not really going to sell any more 6Es, and unless someone wants to withhold payouts twice, they're not going to buy the 8s either. And then that's going to trigger the end game. But we could very well be at the point where no more trains get bought, because it's just not economically viable for someone to hold back on 2 sets of sort of 400, 380 or 420 or 440 payouts in order for that company to buy an 8 train
which barely improves its run. You know, if it's got a 4+4, an 8 train really probably isn't doing much more for it, except in very exceptional circumstances, and I'm not sure I can be bothered to find those exceptional circumstances across all these companies, because it's probably marginal anyway, and when you take into account not paying out for 2 runs, I don't think it's marginal at all. I don't think it'll be profitable for anyone to withhold 2 payouts to get a 6E or an 8 train. So people, I think, are going to be running with what they've got until game end. Equally, I talked about the companies not starting up, and I totally don't think they're going to now, because, as I said, they've got too many barriers. You've got to, let's say you started this LHR Long High Railway, well, you've got to start it, capitalise it, have a turn of knot. You've got to lay track here and here to connect, or here and here. Well, you've got to lay track to connect it up. Then it's only got a short run into a tokened station. You've got to buy a train for it, so it's not going to run for a turn anyway. And then it's going to get a pitiful 90 run or something, and I don't know, 80 share price, which isn't giving a bonus. And you're doing this, and you're going to have to sell shares that are bringing in 320 or 32 or 25 a share, because everyone's at their certificate limit. So in order to start a company, you're going to have to dump off shares that are making you 25, 27, 32 a share, in order to have a couple of turns of making nothing and then make 9 per share. It's not it's not viable. The certificate limits, in their own way, act as a brake on how many of these 14 companies can open. So although there's lots of options for you, when it reaches this point in the game, there's too many tokens and there's too many certificates to make. Unless corporations are just running pitifully, and have essentially been dumped, and someone's going bankrupt with a corporation that's barely got a working train on it, there's no incentive to open up a new company that might be stronger. But as it is, all the companies we've got on the board are healthy enough, and as we can see here, even the JLR, which is our worst performing train that's been shut out, has been making 19 a share and is about to make a hell of a lot more with its fancy new 6E train. There's just no way that you're going to found one of these new companies. So the combination of I can't see a new company making sense and I can't see any trains making sense means that I think I may have hit the point now where it's just a case of running and running and running until we've ditched the trains off. So I think we're probably looking at like 5 runs for every company, and then calling it a day. I'm going to see if there's any possibility of movement, but it might be as simple as that. It might just be 5 runs, and we'll call it there.